From the sun-drenched shores of Sparta to the besieged walls of Troy, this is a story of desire so powerful, it ignited a war that would echo through the ages. It's the tale of a love that defied gods, kings, and empires, a love that became a legend. This is the tragic and epic story of Helen and Paris. Our story begins not with a romance, but with a prophecy. In the great city of Troy, Queen Hecuba had a terrifying dream. She gave birth to a flaming torch that burned her entire city to the ground. The seers, consulting the omens, foretold that her newborn son Paris would be the ruin of Troy. Terrified, the king ordered his son to be left on a mountainside to die. But destiny, as always, had other plans. The infant was found and raised by shepherds, growing up as a handsome and gentle young man, unaware of his royal heritage. Meanwhile, in Sparta, a different kind of legend was being born. The most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, was a daughter of Zeus himself. Her beauty was divine, her allure irresistible. She was sought after by every prince and king in the land. Her father, fearing a war over her hand, made a pact with all her suitors. They would all swear an oath to defend her future husband and her marriage no matter what. The oath was sworn, and Helen chose Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Her life, for a time, was one of peace and royal duty. But the fates were already weaving their threads. The gods, as often happens, were the true architects of this tragedy. At a great divine wedding, the goddess of discord, Eris, furious at not being invited, threw a golden apple onto the table. It was inscribed with a simple, deadly phrase, "For the fairest." 3 goddesses immediately claimed it: Hera, the queen of the gods, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Unable to decide, Zeus sent them to the mortal world, to a humble shepherd on Mount Ida to pass judgment. This shepherd was, of course, the young prince Paris. Each goddess appeared before him and offered a bribe. Hera promised him power, a vast empire to rule. Athena offered him wisdom and military glory, making him the greatest warrior in the world. But Aphrodite offered him something else, a temptation he could not refuse: the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. She promised him Helen. Paris, a man guided by his heart rather than his ambition, chose Aphrodite. He awarded her the golden apple, and in doing so, he sealed the fate of 2 nations. He gained a goddess's favor, but earned the eternal wrath of Hera and Athena. Aphrodite was a goddess of her word. Soon after the judgment, Paris's royal lineage was revealed, and he was welcomed back to Troy as a prince. Not long after, he set sail for Sparta on a diplomatic mission, a guest of King Menelaus. The king, unaware of the divine pact Paris had made, welcomed him into his home with the utmost hospitality. Ancient accounts describe their meeting in various ways, but all agree on one thing. It was a moment of immediate and overwhelming passion. Helen, despite being a queen and a wife, was captivated by Paris's charm, his youth, and his beauty. She was a woman of mortal flesh and blood, and Aphrodite's influence was undeniable. She saw in Paris not just a man, but a chance at a different destiny, a freedom from the golden cage of her Spartan life. Menelaus, trusting and unsuspecting, was called away to a funeral. It was during his absence that Paris and Helen made their fateful decision. They fled. Paris did not abduct Helen against her will. Rather, she chose to leave with him. She left behind her life, her kingdom, her husband, and even her 9-year-old daughter, Hermione. This was not a forced kidnapping, but an elopement driven by an unshakable and perhaps cursed love. When Menelaus returned to Sparta and found his queen gone, his fury was beyond measure. His brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, heard his plight. The oath sworn by all of Helen's suitors now came due. Every single king and prince in Greece was bound by honor and by divine promise to help Menelaus reclaim his wife and his honor. And so, the greatest army the world had ever seen was assembled. Legends like the cunning Odysseus, the wise Nestor, and the fearsome Ajax answered the call. But one name stood above them all. Achilles, the greatest warrior of his age, was convinced to join the cause, his destiny tied to the glory of this war. This was not just a war for a woman. It was a war for honor, for the violation of Xenia, the sacred Greek code of hospitality, and for the pride of a continent. For the Greeks, Paris's act was a moral and divine offense that could not go unpunished. The Greek armada arrived at the walls of Troy, a magnificent, impenetrable fortress city. For 10 long years, the war raged. The plain outside the city became a battlefield, a graveyard for countless heroes on both sides. Inside the city walls, the love affair of Helen and Paris was a constant source of tension. While Paris was a beautiful prince, he was not a great warrior. He was often criticized by his own brother, the noble Hector, the true protector of Troy, for his cowardice and for bringing this destruction upon them all. Helen, for her part, was a tragic figure. She lived a gilded life within the palace, but she was haunted by what she had done. She would often stand on the walls looking out at the Greek camp, a place where she saw men dying because of her. She was racked with guilt and sorrow, and though she loved Paris, she understood the immense cost of their happiness. She was not a villain, but a victim of both divine manipulation and her own human desires. The war was a dance of brutal, epic events. The death of Patroclus, Achilles' beloved companion, enraged the Greek hero, who returned to the battlefield and killed Hector, the noblest son of Troy. This was a devastating blow to the Trojans. In the end, it was Paris who, with a shot guided by the god Apollo, found Achilles' one vulnerable spot, his heel, killing the greatest of all Greek warriors. It was an act that brought a moment of relief to the Trojans, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. But the end was near. Paris himself was eventually killed by a poisoned arrow from the hero Philoctetes. He died in the arms of the nymph Oenone, his first love, whom he had abandoned for Helen. She refused to heal him, a final bitter moment of poetic justice. With Paris's death, Helen became a prize to be won, a symbol of a war that had now lost its reason. The city and the woman who had caused so much suffering were now unprotected. The war was finally brought to an end not by strength, but by cunning. Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, devised a brilliant plan, the Trojan Horse. The Greeks feigned retreat, leaving behind a giant wooden horse as an offering to the gods. Despite the warnings of the priest Laocoon, the Trojans, believing the war was over, brought the horse inside their walls. That night, Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse emerged, opening the gates for the rest of their army. The city of Troy, once thought to be invincible, was utterly destroyed. It was a massacre, a fire, a final act of revenge for a 10-year siege. During the chaos, Menelaus found Helen in the palace. He had come to kill her, his heart full of rage and vengeance. But when he saw her, his hand faltered. Her beauty, a thing of legend, still held a power over him. She was, after all, still the woman he had loved. He chose to take her back to Sparta as his queen, not to kill her. And so, the story of Helen and Paris comes to an end. Their tragedy is more than just a tale of two lovers. It's an epic that asks profound questions about love, fate, and free will. Was their love a divine destiny or a foolish choice? Was Helen a pawn of the gods or an agent of her own desires? And was the love that burned so brightly worth the fire that consumed an entire civilization? Here, on Epic Love Stories TV, their legend lives on. A reminder that the most powerful forces in the world are not armies or kings, but the unseen, uncontrollable passions of the human heart.